What we're doing when we do a gesture drawing is exactly what we're doing when we're doing an analytical or technical drawing. All of the figures remain the same, except that my recommendation is that you set up a vertical line, estimate where the half is, decide the circle's there, put in the rectangle, come up for a series of triangles, and you're done. Now, you're going to be doing figure drawings, you're going to be doing gesture drawings of figures and interiors and landscape and all sorts of things, whole groups of figures. You've got to be able to find 2- and 3-dimensional shapes that you can jot down very quickly, and this is what I had wanted. And I wanted them to show the character of the 3 bottles that we've chosen for you to draw, and this isn't quite getting there, all right? It's too stiff. This is whose? Okay, this is good. Your border might be a little large and it's crowding your group, but you've done everything I've asked you to do. You're not, well, not really. Yeah, but this isn't centered. This shoulder's higher than that. This one's higher than this. This one's higher than that. I want you to check your chair at home. It may need shimming up on one side because everything's sloped. The analytical drawings are fine. The difficulties are still there with things reading equally on both sides, and that's what we're after. Gesture drawings are much too stiff. Really utter a primal scream and then go at it full force, because you don't want to be timid about this at all. Whose is this? What's wrong with it? Loudly so we can all hear you.
There's not enough construction to it, the analytical?
Well, it's not so much there's not construction, but they're not laid out. By virtue of the fact that they're so far away from each other, they relate to the sides, and this stands as the central piece. They don't function as a group. They have to be closer to each other to function as a group. Those run the danger of being just a tiny bit too close. This is a little less wide than it could be, and this is too wide. So this wide border pushed everything in on that one. You know, you're trying to adjust all of it. Get rid of that bottle. It's not a very good wine bottle. And your gestures are all right. You just have to get a very much softer pencil that will make a harder, greasier line. There's some problems in measuring this. What kind of a bottle is this? This isn't a Perrier, is it? No. Whose is this? This isn't. All right, there's some problems with that. The spaces here are a bit too big. Everything you're doing is pretty good, Jess. Pretty good. You've got a lump down here that doesn't relate to that lump. You've done very well. You left out, well, you've got a border, it's too small. You did this in a route too? Yes. This is nice. They're a little too close together. They're a little too far away from the border, and the border is much too thin. You want to get a series of relationships and sizes that ring true. How do you deal with the top of these bottles? Now, the tops of these bottles intend to be fairly similar. Here are 3 different bottles, all possessing identical tops because they will be crimped in the assembly line by a crimper that'll put a metal top on them. What you want to do is do a larger drawing, and notice how that comes down. Got it? And then if you assume this is the center, and this is the side of the notional space, you're coming through here, and you're coming through here, and you're coming through here, and you'd have a vertical there, a vertical here, a vertical here. You'd need another diagonal coming to this point, a horizontal there, and here, and there. Do you see it? Now, the reason that we're so concerned with all of this is that the light would fall on that plane and on this one. And if we were to draw this 3-dimensionally, this would come down here, And this would come around from behind and over here this way. Remember, we're looking down on top of a three-dimensional element. Then it would come in on both sides, and we would have this recess. So that drops in, and then we're coming down longer here, and we're coming in through here. Well, if we come through like this, we can start to reticulate this. Do you see what I'm doing? We can start breaking this down into three-dimensional planes. So we would have a light on that. We'd have a light on this. This would be in shadow. There might be a cast shadow here, and the light would come back on. Each one of these tessellations would be a brushstroke. And we have to hallucinate. We have to imagine that on that soft, smooth surface that's all curved, that we've got planes. Well, they don't exist. But how useful it's been found to be by artists for centuries to break everything down into flat tessellations. They become brushstrokes. They become cuts with a chisel if you're sculpting. They become tessellations if you're doing mosaics. This has served everybody magnificently. But the civilian doesn't see this way, think this way, nor need they understand how this is done. But you, as art students, must, as sculptors, as painters, no matter what you're going to do, these tiny rectilinear elements or little tiny squares are central to your conceptualizing everything you see, from landscapes, seascapes, it doesn't matter what. And you'll see illustrations of the application of these Cartesian squares and grids repeatedly in this course.
I didn't know how to address like the bottom little curve-ins at the bottom of the bottles.
You just estimate it.
Just, all right.
Yeah, you can hold your stick up and sight it, and you can say it measures from, say, 11 o'clock to 5 o'clock. That's the angle, and you can put it down, and when it hits the center line, you can connect the other side to it. So you're coming to the bottom of the, bottle. It's touching the ground plane. You estimate it's up this high. You've got a center line here. You say it's going from 11 to 5, and this connects, and the other two should be identical, okay? That becomes so small and so unimportant that you could be off and nobody would know. And I won't tell them. Go ahead.
I have a question. Can I show you this?
Yeah.
When I looked at the center of the radius and I brought it up, it looked like it was too much of an oval to be a circle. So what I did was I drew two little circles, and I was wondering if that was wrong. Or...
You were wrong. I say that affectionately, all right? Okay. But you were wrong. The circle isn't at that point, but it's down here. Do you see it?
Yeah.
And that would give you that shoulder.
So it's not necessarily always where the shadow falls?
No, in this case, it isn't.
Okay.
So I gave you a principle rather than a rule, and you had to look at it with fresh eyes every time and determine where it fell. And if you close your eye and you draw this circle touching these two sides, you'll see it's coming very much lower than that value change when you light it from above. Okay? Some of the homework has the circle inscribed, but the lines come down and there are angles on the end. There's a vertical and a diagonal. The circle has no influence on the contour, therefore it has no business there. It's a mistake. If it's showing here, then there has to be the justification for it. And it has to influence the contour of the bottle. These are the things you're to look at very carefully. And you're going to be looking at, first of all, bottles, because somebody else, just like all of us, designed them, so they're thinking in ways that we can identify and learn from. And then you'll read somebody who spent a lifetime designing fonts for printing, and they're speaking the same language, and they're using the same devices. And then you talk with architects, and you discover that they're doing the same thing. And if you happen to sit down with a composer, you're going to be shocked to discover how our disciplines overlap their disciplines. And what's at the bottom of all of this is the human brain. Doesn't matter what particular art or craft it adopts, it has to reason like a human being, solve problems the way computers are attempting to copy the way we solve problems, etc. So if you learn to do something as demanding as art, and unfortunately art has been trivialized since probably the Second World War, where some people view it as therapy, which is as insulting as suggesting that physicists are doing what they're doing because of its therapeutic value. Speak to the psychiatrist, they'll tell you otherwise. But anyway, this is a serious craft, a serious piece of work. And you can imagine that if it weren't, it would not have attracted minds like Leonardo, Michelangelo, Picasso, Seurat, Monet. These were very bright people. So let's look at